All right. Where are we, ladies and gentlemen? Are we live or are we not? There we go. It does look like we are live now. Let's just wait for the image to get through. There we go. What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to each and every one of you to now the official first episode of the StephanZA show, or just the Stephan show. I think I'm just going to go with Stephan show, but StephanZA just because, that's the channel's name. And the reason it had to be the channel's name is because Stephan was taken. So I could have just called myself Stephan on YouTube, or Stephan. I had to go with StephanZA. But it also kind of works because it is Stephan speaking about issues in the ZA. So, it kind of makes sense. But this is the inaugural episode, I guess, of the StephanZA report. It's basically what we've been doing up until now. I just couldn't come up with a name. I suck with names. I'm good with ideas, but names I really suck with. Now, I have a very full episode for you guys today, and I think you're going to enjoy being here. Look, at the end of the day, almost all news coming out of South Africa and almost everything that you will ever hear anyone cover is going to be bad news, right? It's always going to be bad news, and the reason it's always going to be bad news is because that's the kind of news that first and foremost sells. If I just got up here and I said, hey guys, today 4 puppies were saved, some of you will watch and you'll go, oh man, that's so sweet. But not a lot will actually care about that. As humans, we have a negativity bias. We care about negative stuff. And it kind of makes sense why. If something good happens in the country, that's great. But it's probably not going to have that big of an effect on you as, for example, the president of South Africa maybe actually being a criminal, which we all know he is, but it may actually now be official, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that is going to go into that. We'll be on to that story in a minute. But ultimately, that story will have far more of an impact on your life, and so we tend to care about bad news more because bad news means bad things for us. And so that's why pretty much always, but for those of us that care about freedom, that care about democracy, that care about capitalism, bad news in South Africa is almost always good news for us. Because while, yes, right now we're suffering, right now the world is sort of falling apart, in time, we hope that it will lead to the decimation and ultimately the destruction of the ANC, as well as the freedom forces of this country. And we could get back to actually having a proper, well-functioning country, right? So just keep in mind always that we shouldn't be defeated. Yes, there's bad news, and we cover that bad news, and we have to be on top of it. We have to know. My job is to help you make sense of what is going on in our crazy world, because for reasons that are oftentimes not known to me, a lot of you have decided, I trust this guy. I think he's pretty honest with us. So I'm going to listen to what he has to say. And I truly am humbled by the very fact that you would even begin to do that. And I try my absolute best to always be honest with you. It doesn't mean I'm always right? I can be wrong. I can read something and my own biases can get in the way. And I come away with the completely wrong idea about what actually happened there. But that still doesn't mean I lied. Right? And that's the thing that I always try to do on this channel is give you the information as honestly as I understand it. And hopefully it is also correct. But of course, mistakes can happen. And so if I make those mistakes, this is where you can call me out on it. You can do it on comments on the videos, or you can just DM me and be like, you lying son of a gun. How dare you? And then just point out what the lie is. And if it is a lie, I will apologize immediately. Although I don't think I'll ever lie to you guys because, well, in this country, you don't really have to make up the news. The News 24 guys in the mainstream media, they have to make up the news because they have to find all sorts of inventive ways of telling you why this is not the ANC's fault and why actually white people are to blame for everything. But if you're not part of the mainstream media or the ANC Defense Force, you don't have to fabricate the news. The ANC does that for me. Like, all I have to do every single day is wake up. I wake up, I open my internet, and I go, oh, right, there's a lot of content here. What will I cover today? So, this is just how life works. Now, before we get going, and once again, want to give a massive shout out to each and every one of you. Welcome to the stream. I'm super happy to have all of you here. And just before we get going, I want to give a massive shout out to Lord Neville, who yesterday, after the stream had already ended, donated money to me over on Stub. Truly appreciate that donation, bro. Thank you for that. And Lord Neville, on your message for the donation, Lord Neville, first and foremost, watched the video called "The ANC Never Wanted Peace: The Lie That Fooled the World." And Lord Neville, your fears are well taken, right? That video was incredibly raw. I was, and I'll admit this, I was quite emotional in that video, because once you realize that your government is hell-bent on punishing you for invented crimes, and crimes that you had nothing to do with, even if those crimes are real, you were not alive at the time that those crimes were committed, it leaves a sour taste in your mouth. And I get your fears that this could put me in the crosshairs of the ANC or of government officials, but fundamentally, my decision from day one with this channel was, if I have to get into trouble for the truth, then so be it. Right? If I get into trouble for lies and for fabricating stuff and for making stuff up, that's a whole different story. Then I deserve to get into trouble. But for the truth, Jesus tells me that will happen, right? Like, that is the one thing that I'm convinced of. At some point, I will get into trouble for telling the truth. And if I get into trouble for telling the truth, then there are blessings that will be bestowed upon me by the Father. So I'm happy to take those problems and deal with whatever the ANC wants to throw at me, because fundamentally I trust that what I'm doing is in service to God, right? So I truly appreciate the concern, and of course, if I ever make a video, and this goes out to all of you, not just to Lord Neville, but if I ever make a video where you feel like I've stepped over a line that should not be crossed by moral people, please call me out on it, because it can happen. I don't script my videos. I don't script my live streams, right? I just speak, and I hope that, what I'm saying makes sense and that you guys follow it. But if I do something or say something that you feel like, whoa, bro, that is unnecessary, and there's no way for you, there's no way that you can say that as a Christian or just as a decent human being, please call me out on it. Please be like, hey, bro, this and this and this, I don't think Christians or normal people should be speaking this way. And if I believe that you are correct, I promise you that I will apologize and I will change. I'm not above apologizing. I'm not above changing, because, hey, I'm never going to be perfect. And as a result of that, mistakes are going to happen. And I trust that each of you will call me out on the mistakes that I make. So with all of this said, and Parzival, okay, so you clearly watched a Tucker Carlson video, because I watched the same one. It of course, my problems with Tucker Carlson's assertion that President Trump is the Antichrist shows that Tucker Carlson doesn't even know his own Bible. He looked for a couple of verses, used those verses to try and pretend like this is somehow applicable to President Trump. The idea, look, I will go on the record right now, and I will tell all of you this right now. This is a prediction that you can mark right now. In the next decade, there are going to be bombshell revelations around the independent media personalities that a lot of you watch every single day, people that I watch every single day. I'll just go back. This wasn't even a planned conversation, but it is a thing that I've been sort of working on in the background as a video that I want to make. So I'll just get this out of the way now. 2016 happens and President Trump wins the election against all odds. All of the celebrities and all of the media was on the side of the Democrats. The Democrats were so convinced that this is the way that you win elections, because this has always been how you win elections, right? And so ultimately, the Democrats should have won that. But somehow President Trump goes through and wins the election. How did he do it? He did it through YouTubers, independent voices that were actually starting to share the truth of what is happening in America and what is happening around the world. And this led to a cascading effect around the world of YouTubers gaining ever more notoriety. But up until 2020, YouTubers were still utilizing the mainstream media. Most YouTubers that you would watch would bring up a mainstream media article, and then they would give you their ideas of what that mainstream article actually means, right? And so the mainstream media still had its place. It still had its ability to push information out to the public in the form of a psyop. Now, there's a wonderful video by the Y-Files if you want to go watch what psyops actually are. The video is based on Chase Hughes and the work that Chase Hughes has done. Now, Chase Hughes, I've made a video on him in the past. Chase Hughes is literally the man that trains governments on how to run psyops, right? So this is the guy for psyops. Chase Hughes developed a 20-point system that allows for ordinary people to judge whether or not they're part of a psyop. And interestingly enough, just to give you guys, because a psyop doesn't automatically mean right or wrong, right? It's not true or false because it's a psyop. A psyop simply means it's a psychological operation designed to convince the viewer or the listener of a specific point of contention, whatever that might be. So a great example of this, if you go back to the COVID era, the story during COVID that COVID broke out in a wet market of contaminated food or contaminated wildlife that was consumed, and this is how COVID broke out. That story sort of has every single marker. It has a 20 out of 20 in terms of a psyop, right? So just looking at how it works, actually, I think its score is something like 82%. It has an 82% psyop score, meaning it is almost definitely a psyop. But conversely, the story that COVID broke out in a lab and was actually, escaped from a lab was also a psyop, also scoring about 77 or something percent on the psyop scores, showing that that was also a psyop. Now, we today know that it was, in fact, from the lab, right? We know the evidence is overwhelming that it did come from a lab. So the idea that it's a psyop simply means that there are very powerful people with a lot of money that want to push the story, and they want people to know what the story is. And some of the hallmarks that you get when it comes to a psyop is the story will break, and within a few hours, you will get just absolutely flooded with information from separate sources, all claiming the exact same thing, all referencing the exact same thing, all with the same talking points. That's sort of one of the first hallmarks of what a psyop is. A great example of a psyop was also the letter of the Prominent 44, right? The story broke on some obscure website where they listed the letter. Immediately, News 24 found it. Like, literally, the letter wasn't even up for, I think, an hour, and News 24 found this letter on the internet. Out of all the millions and millions of pages that you could find, News 24 finds it within an hour, and News 24 publishes it. Within 24 hours, you have tens of thousands of mouthpieces holding up this letter as a gotcha to President Trump. Look, Afrikaners are not being discriminated against. Here are 44 prominent Afrikaners that say that they're not persecuted and that they're not being oppressed here in South Africa. Then, of course, the following Sunday, Rapport is actually the first to break the story that this letter was written and devised, and the whole campaign was run by Durko as a psyop, right? So that's confirmation. That's how psyops are sort of viewed, and that's how they happen. Now, I'm telling you, and you can write this down, in the next 10 years, you will find out that a lot of the podcasters that you watch today are not independent podcasters. They serve masters. These masters have deep pockets, and these masters have certain things that they want the public to believe. Where did that come from? 2020. You see, when COVID happened, something magical occurred. During COVID, all of these people that could no longer go to work started podcasts, and podcasts absolutely blew up because everyone was bored. There's no new movies coming out because of COVID, right? No one knows what to do with themselves, so everyone is watching podcasts. And suddenly, the whole world starts watching podcasts. And what started in 2016 as a shift in power away from mainstream media towards independent media is completed by the year 2022. Now, all of the power rests on podcasts, and podcasts are everywhere. And then you start to see a very interesting trend of all of these previous mainstream media journalists being fired or quitting from their mainstream positions and starting their own podcasts. Right? And now suddenly they're independent and they feel so much freer because they're no longer slaves to a system. Now they're going to be able to bring the news to the people. 2024 happens, and for the first time, we actually see the power that podcasting has. Because again, Joe Biden has all the celebrities, all of the mainstream media, a lot of YouTubers, but none of the podcasters. The major podcasters, they're speaking to Trump. They're platforming Trump, and Trump actually blows Kamala Harris out of the water, right? There is nothing left of Kamala Harris at the end of it, because Kamala Harris famously didn't want to go on podcasts. They were sort of just some YouTubers here and there, and for the most part, just nothing. And that's because Kamala Harris sucked the second you actually started talking to her. But fundamentally, that was the completion of it. And then, since 2024, we see even more voices. Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Don Lemon, the guy whose brother was the governor of New York, Cuomo, right? Chris Cuomo, or is Andrew Cuomo, one of the Cuomos. They all start their podcast. Gavin Newsom has a podcast. But it's all planted. My theory, at least. Tucker Carlson is not an independent voice. Megyn Kelly is not an independent voice. Candace Owens isn't an independent voice. Mark Levin isn't an independent voice. 100%. These are not independent voices. These are voices with very powerful people behind them, making sure that you get the news as they see it, as they want you to believe it. And right now, this is actually one of the things that my first story for today is going to go directly against Tucker Carlson, who suddenly now has decided to embrace, Marxism as the newfound thing for Christians, because apparently Christianity and socialism is 100% in lockstep with one another. You cannot be a Christian and not be a socialist, at least if you listen to Tucker Carlson. The fact of the matter is that Tucker Carlson is as captured as he ever was. When he worked for Fox, he was captured by the military-industrial complex, and now that he's no longer at Fox and he's sort of independent, I will go out on a limb and say that Tucker Carlson is most likely owned by very powerful anti-Israel groups. And I'll just give you the following pieces of evidence. Over the last 2 weeks, I have looked at every single article, every single bombshell report from the Tucker Carlson network about Israel and how Israel is behind everything. Right? This is Israel's war. Israel hoodwinked Trump into it. Israel is the one that caused the ceasefire. Israel is the one that's breaking the ceasefire. Israel is the one that forced President Trump into bombing. Israel. Every single one of these articles, every single one of them has anonymous sources. He never names a single source that actually you can fact check. It's an anonymous source. An insider told them these things. They sort of heard it via. My problem is I'm not against insider sources, right? I'm not against anonymous sources. But if your entire story is based purely on an insider, right, and I can't have their name, now you're asking me, I need to trust you and hope that the guy that you spoke to isn't just the janitor. Candace Owens loves to do this as well. And I have the facts. An insider told me. You don't have facts. You have hearsay from some dude. I don't know who the dude is. It could be no one, right? It could be a guy that actually has access to the most privileged information in the world. That is possible, but I don't know, because all you gave me is some anonymous source that I have to trust spoke to you, right? And it could just be the janitor, or it could be someone important. How the hell am I supposed to know? Right? So I don't trust anyone who bases all of the reporting on an anonymous source. It's just anonymous sourcing all the way through. And sort of guaranteed, you're going to find out that the independent voices that you've been listening to were never independent. They hold they hold none of their own views. Their views are firmly designed to get you to think in a specific direction. Take, for example, Tucker Carlson, who is now convinced that President Trump is literally the Antichrist. Candace Owens, who is convinced that President Trump is a Satanist and that the Satanists are running the White House. And now she's calling on world leaders to recognize how evil President Trump is, and that all world leaders, including the world leaders of Iran and of Europe, needs to stand up against this evil Satanist. Okay, you're talking about Europe, the continent that is absolutely nonchalant about abortion. You're talking about a continent where euthanasia of perfectly healthy individuals is not only accepted but celebrated. You're talking about a continent where their freedom of speech can literally get you jailed if you say the things that the government doesn't like. You're talking about a country, Iran, that kills tens of thousands of its own people, that sponsors terrorists around the world. Those are the people that you call upon to witness the Satanist President Trump? Like, look at the company you keep, my bro. Like, guys, let's be very honest here. If you're telling me that President Trump is a Satanist and that your only saving grace is the leaders of Europe, the communist leaders of Europe, or the terrorist leaders of Iran, then you've lost the plot. And I'm sorry, at that point, I can no longer take anything you say seriously, because all I know for a fact is that you were put there to sell me this story. Tucker Carlson famously goes and says, mocking Islam is a crime, or at least should be a crime, because it's the same as mocking Christianity. I'm sorry, what the hell are you talking about? Islam? There is nothing about Islam that is compatible with the Western world. Nothing. Zero. There is nothing about Islam that is compatible with Christianity. Mocking Islam is like the bare essential thing that every single person should be doing. At the very least, you should be mocking Islam. Because if Islam got its way, it would kill you. Right? That's Islam's answer to just about every single problem in the world, is we'll just kill you or you convert. But somehow mocking Islam is the biggest threat to Western democracy, and how dare President Trump do it? And he has a problem with President Trump using the F word on Easter. I'm sorry, but what the hell are you talking about? Easter isn't holy. Easter isn't a holy period. It is a period of remembrance of the Holy Son of God giving his life so that we can be saved from our inequity and sin. If you're going to use the F word, and I've heard Tucker use the F word before, on a random Thursday, it's going to be as wrong as doing it on Easter. Like, literally no difference. It's like people who go, oh, you shouldn't smoke at church. Dude, you shouldn't smoke. Like, it doesn't matter where you smoke. The church isn't holy. The church is the building. Your body is the thing that's holy. It's the temple of the Holy Spirit. So if you smoke in a bar, or if you smoke at church, it's still smoking. You're harming your own body, right? And so it's fabrications upon fabrications from a guy like Tucker Carlson, someone I used to have a tremendous amount of respect for, just FYI. I'm not doing this because I hate Tucker Carlson. I'm doing this because I'm genuinely trying to understand where Tucker Carlson comes from. In my opinion, you want to talk about the influence that Israel has in America. I'm here for it. Let's have that discussion. But we also have to be able to have the discussion about how evil Iran is. Right? We have to be able to have that conversation. And at some point, we have to say, okay, hold on. We can't just be shooting from the hip. let's quickly assess the situation. Right now, America and Israel is involved in trying to remove one of the most evil governments this world has ever seen, beaten only by North Korea. Although one might make the argument that Iran is even worse than North Korea, because at least North Korea doesn't have any designs on world conquest, unlike the Iranians, who in their constitution have death to Israel and death to America as established in 1981. Right? So just so that we're clear. And then we say, okay, hold on. We want this evil government to be defeated. We can't go shooting our allies right now. We know that our ally is literally Stalin, right? It's literally an evil dude. That's perfectly fine. If that's what your belief is of Israel, you can say that. Israel is absolutely evil. Okay, great. But let's have Israel and America first sort out Iran. And then once Iran is sorted out, we look to Israel and go, okay, now you. Because priorities. I want Iran defeated first, and then we can do all the things you want to do with Israel. We can have all the investigations into Israel that you want. We can have America cut all funding to Israel. If that is what you want, let's have that conversation once Iran is destroyed. What I don't understand is how Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Megyn Kelly are literally burning the boat of America because Israel is on the boat, but the pirate boat is also firing at America, and they're going, no, we'll burn this bitch down before we see these guys defeat the pirates. It's like, what the hell are you doing? First defeat the pirates, and then we throw the mutineer overboard. Right? Like, we don't start firing at our allies when there's an enemy on the horizon. We kill the enemy, and then we fire on our allies. That's how you do it. You don't just go balls to the wall and do your own thing. And this idea that Iran didn't fire first, what the hell are you talking about? For the last 47 years, Iran has killed thousands upon thousands of people. For the last 47 years, Iran has been behind the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas. Iran has been behind the Muslim Brotherhood, all of the different Shiite networks that have blown themselves up in all across Europe, that have blown themselves up and killed people in America. Iran has fired first 47 years ago. 47 years ago, Iran started firing, and they have never stopped. No matter how nicely people have asked them, no matter how much people have tried to argue and debate and ask nicely, Iran doesn't stop because Iran is Shiite 12er Islam. That's Iran. Now, if you don't know what 12er Islam is because you're a leftist and you don't know what education is, allow me to quickly inform you. 12er Shiite Islam holds that Allah will not return until the entire world has been conquered in the name of Allah. That means that if you're not a Muslim and you're supporting Iran, you better start learning the Quran real fast. Because if Iran wins, you will be forced to go to your mosque 5 times a day, bend your knee to whichever direction they think Mecca is in, and start bowing. Because if you don't, they'll just kill you. Because Allah needs them to have the entire world as Muslim. That's 12er Shia for you. So by all means, let's have our little debates about what is and isn't Israel. But if I have to make a choice between the evil Israel, right, and whatever designs they have for Palestine, and Iran that literally wants to conquer the entirety of the world, and they don't make this a secret. This is not something that I'm telling you, and the Muslims in Iran would be like, oh, wait, what the hell is this guy talking about? Like, holy crap. No, this is their official position, as said by their mullahs and by their ayatollah. This is literally the position that they have official. There's videos of them saying this is what they're going to do, because that's the belief that they have. This is the sect that they belong to. And you're telling me that the evil Zionist that just wants Palestine is worse than the guys that wants to bomb the entire world. Like, I'm sorry, but what the hell are you talking about? You have lost track of reality. Just 100%. And I don't care that Israel is just mostly atheists. That doesn't matter. You guys still don't get it. I couldn't care less about Israel. I could not care less. I believe in rational target selection. And I don't care if Israel is atheist or Jew or Christian or whatever the hell they are. I look at the different countries involved in this war and I go, right, who's the most evil? And then I look at the history of these two countries and I go, well, Iran is the most evil. And Iran has the capacity to visit the most evil upon the world should Iran be allowed to continue. Okay, let's defeat Iran. And if you then want to come to me and say, right, let's look into Israel. I demand that we look into Israel. I will be with you. I will be right there next to you and I will say, let's start those investigations. Let's look at what Israel is up to. And great, let's have those conversations. But don't start doing it. Don't start burning the boat while we're at war. Like, what the hell are you doing? This makes no sense. It's absolutely crazy to me. Anyways, just watch this space. Watch this space and you'll see. In about 10 years, you're going to find out that the people that you've been listening to, the people that I've been listening to, they were not independent actors. They were paid very much, a lot of money, to make sure that you believe certain things. And all I can hope is that you will actually, when you approach that day, that you will listen and remember back to this conversation. And you will go, oh, wow, okay, Stephan was right. I was taken a fool because I trusted people who genuinely should not have been trusted. And by that, I am not suggesting that you suddenly start trusting Ben Shapiro, right? I have had my problems with Ben Shapiro for a long time. And there are issues that I have with Mark Levin. I have no time for Mark Levin, just to be clear again, right? I think both of these groups are equally bad. I don't like the fact that Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro labels anyone that asks questions about Israel as anti-Semitic. But I will also say that at some point, Tucker Carlson crossed over from just asking questions to full-blown anti-Semitism. And you have to be able to at least admit that. Tucker may not have started as an extremist, but he has become one. If you spend months every single day vilifying Israel, laying every single problem that exists in the world at the door of Israel with no actual evidence except for your own sort of musings on what the world is about, at some point I go, okay, wait, this is insane. Like, holy crap, dude, this is insane. You can't keep blaming, you can't keep saying all of the problems in the world exists because of Israel. But then when people say, dude, that sounds a little anti-Semitic to me. And they go, well, oh, I'm not allowed to criticize Israel. So, well, when every problem is a problem of the Jews, it starts to feel a little convenient that every single time you're called out on it, you just go, well, I'm just criticizing Israel. I'm not criticizing all the Jews, except, of course, every problem is the fault of the Jews. So that is a problem for me, right? I don't like that part of it. I'm not going to say that he is an anti-Semite, but I will say, like, there's been things that I've heard Tucker say that is borderline, right? Where I sort of go, wow, that is insane. I would not have put it that way. But anyways, I just wanted to get that out of the way so that we can talk. And I never said that Israel and Jew is the same. I told you there are things that Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Megyn Kelly, there are things that they say where you go, whoa, that does not just sound like an isolated event. When you start to blame every single problem on this one group, you do start to go, man, this seems crazy to me. That you would just do this and just like, what the hell are you playing at? Right? That's why I said I'm not willing to call them anti-Semites, but I am willing to say that there's a little bit of anti-Semitism, at least in some of the things that they say. There are some questions around the things that they say. Um, um, what's interesting to me is that a lot of you get super animated whenever we talk about Israel, right? And Israel is this big issue for you. The problem, of course, is that you're also communists. And communism was designed by Jews. I'm not entirely sure what the hell you're talking about. So sometimes they're okay, sometimes they're not. It just depends. Never mind. Let's just leave it that. Leave it at that because I don't think we're going to get anywhere. Because fundamentally, the biggest issue is that a lot of the people, and not all of you, but a lot of the people that is currently sort of commenting, especially the ones somehow thinking that if they just get really personal and start attacking me, that somehow strengthens their own argument. Let's get some stuff just in order. You can call me whichever names you want, right? And it doesn't really bother me because from my perspective, I don't care who you are. You have no value as far as I'm concerned because I don't know you, right? So your views also have no value when it comes to what you think of me. But even if I was a moron, as someone so brazenly stated, that still doesn't mean my argument is wrong. You would have to prove my argument wrong if you're going to try and make your argument seem plausible or in any way, shape, or form believable. The issue that I think a lot of you have, especially the guys that's currently attacking me, is that you have already decided that the Jews are the big problem. That's a foregone conclusion. That you will not even debate or deliberate. All you need to figure out now is how big of a problem are they? Because they are a problem. You just need to figure out what can they be blamed for. That means, at its core, that you are almost always wrong about everything. Because that's the nature of bias. The nature of bias is that you lose any ability to think critically about anything. Because all you know is that the Jews are guilty of everything. It's now just a matter of what's everything that they're guilty of. That's not the way that you think about the world. That's not the way that you approach information. That's a way to really make yourself seem stupid to people who don't do that. The way you should approach every single story, the way you should approach every single piece of information is from first principles. Ask yourself, what is the rational conclusions here? What are the logical conclusions here? What is actually going on here? And then extrapolate from those first principles until you reach a conclusion that makes sense and accounts for all of the factors, not just the factors that you hope would ultimately play itself out. Because at that point, it's insanity. Like, it just doesn't make sense. President Trump has proven to be a guy. In fact, that's been the entire criticism of President Trump for years now, is that he doesn't listen to anyone. He just does what he wants. And then suddenly this war break out. And now President Trump is just a puppet. He only listens to Bibi. Both of these things cannot be true at the same time. Right? Like, both of these things cannot be true at the same time. Either President Trump listens to people sometimes, or he never listens to anyone. But it cannot be that he never listens to anyone. He just does what he wants to do. He's a dictator. But then on the flip side, he's also just in the hands of Israel. What in the hell are you talking about? It's insane. And yeah, I'm not American. You're absolutely correct, Capture. Your name is fitting. You're absolutely right. I'm not American, but I do have eyes. I do have a working brain. And as a result of that, I can extrapolate about world events. Because if we're going to start playing the game of you're not even this, then you're so quickly going to run out of a lot of things that you're not allowed to say. Because by that same metric, I would argue you're probably not a Jew. So why are you talking about Israel? What do you have to do with Israel? You're not a Jew. You're not allowed to speak about that. If I'm not American and therefore I'm not allowed to speak about issues in America, then you not being an Israelite, it means that you cannot speak about things in Israel. It's got nothing to do with you. You don't live there. You see how stupid that argument is when we actually extrapolate and take it to where it needs to go? So don't be stupid. Don't make stupid arguments. Either engage with the argument in good faith or leave. No one invited you here, just so that we're clear. You were not invited. You arrived, and I'm happy to have you here. But if you want to leave, you can go. You don't even have to announce it. No one will miss you. Okay, so ultimately, let's get into. I wish I could say let's get into less charged topics, but I doubt that's going to be the case. Because let's be real, we have a bunch of freedom fighters in the channel. They're probably going to fight tooth and nail because, hey, the one thing, if there is one truth in this world, it is that communism can work. It just needs way more than 30 years. 32 years is not enough. It needs 50 or 100 or maybe 200 years. But at some point, communism will work and it will free all of us. All you need to do is listen to Julius Malema, the MK party, Jacob Zuma, or Paul Mashatile, or any of the communists inside the ANC. They just need a little bit more time. Even though the country has really been doing badly since 2007 because of decisions that the communists made. It's life. What can you do? That's just how it goes. Michael, which capitalism are you referring to? If I may just quickly ask, which capitalism are you referring to? What capitalism is treating you so poorly? Are you South African, first and foremost? Let's quickly ask this. Are you South African? Okay, our current system. So, South Africa. What part of our current system, according to you, is capitalist? Name an area in our current system that is capitalist. Oh, you're American. Okay, name an area in the current system that is actually capitalist. Banks are capitalists. The banks in America are the most regulated institutions in the entire America. That's not a capitalist system. Banks cannot lend to certain people. Banks cannot move their money in the way that they want to. Banks can't really decide who they want to give loans to or who they don't want to give loans to. All of this is absolutely regulated. So no, transport also super regulated. So also not going to work. Healthcare, it's actually more regulated than most people realize. In fact, it's the regulations that is making healthcare unaffordable in America. It is not the healthcare itself that's the problem. One thing that stands out whenever I talk to people who blame capitalism for everything is that people don't know what capitalism even is. Most people, when you ask them what is capitalism, they'll have some kind of notion of what they think capitalism is. And this will almost always be current system. Because you have people in Europe that claim capitalism is this evil system that's oppressing them. Europe is the least capitalist area in the world. In fact, China has certain sectors that are more free than Europe. China have certain sectors that is more free than Europe. Europe is one of the most centrally planned economies in the world. And yet you'll have Europeans saying the current system is killing us, capitalism evil. You need to learn first what capitalism is if you're going to try and attack capitalism. So I'll give you guys some facts. Everywhere in the world where central planning has been tried, it has failed and has led to millions upon millions dead. And dead in bad ways. Starvation, usually. But oftentimes just from famines and diseases and all sorts of failures of the central planning committees. Everywhere. For the last 34 years, Europe has tried desperately to become the next big centrally planned location on Earth. And for the last 30 years, Europe has shown absolutely zero economic growth. And actually, things have started to go really, really badly in Europe, with most people seeing their wages stagnate, their cost of living go up exponentially sometimes. So ultimately, central planning still has a 100% track record of failing every single time. Capitalism is merely freedom. That's it. Capitalism is saying that the market knows better what it needs than a central planning committee. The problem is that most people have been hoodwinked into believing that the system that they're currently living in is capitalism, when it is not. The world is more regulated today than it has ever been before. And the saddest part of it is that every single thing that you guys blame, that I would blame alongside you. I've seen the healthcare costs in America. It's absolutely insane that people are paying that much for healthcare. But the healthcare problem is designed by the legislation. The regulation is what allows it to be that expensive. Because you have a system that has been ingrained in America that feeds into itself because of regulation. You have the insurance companies that have a guaranteed check from the government. They cannot fail. They cannot fail. You have the hospitals that have a guaranteed check from the government. They cannot fail. And you have the banks with a guaranteed check from the government. They cannot fail. And then you wonder why the insurance companies, the hospitals, and the banks are running the show as if they're morons. Like, why are they making things so expensive? Because they can. Because the insurance company has no incentive to keep prices down at hospitals, because if it ever got into a position where it could physically no longer pay the hospital, the government will bail it out. The hospitals have no incentive to keep prices low, because if they ever got into trouble, the banks will simply bail them out. And if the banks doesn't, the government will simply bail them out. So from all of their positions, they can charge as much as they want. And if things go wrong, the government will just back them up. Not to mention the fact that the regulation that currently exists in America makes it almost impossible for new healthcare systems to be established, because of the regulation that makes it so difficult to establish a new healthcare company. So you don't have competition. There is just no competition. In fact, when you look across America, you will find that most states in America have 2 healthcare providers. 2. And they're designed in such a way that they don't compete with one another. They don't really cross over into each other's business, which allows all of them to just make more and more money. Again, all of it can be traced back to regulation. And if you don't want to trust my word for it, go listen to Thomas Sowell. In my opinion, one of the greatest economists that have ever lived. Go read his books where he shows you the decisions that was made by government and how those decisions were lobbied for by the hospitals, by the insurance companies, by the banks, to ensure that they can charge as much as they want. And no one can do anything about it. Right? That's the issue. It's not capitalism. You don't have a free market system. You don't live in a free market system. Now, America has some elements that are quite free. They're not free, but they're quite free. For the most part, however, America is about as free as Europe, and Europe isn't free at all. So the idea that capitalism is to blame just shows me that you haven't thought about what capitalism actually is. And I would argue that until you can do that, you're probably going to run into some issues. Because right now, the government is selling you the following solution. The government is telling you, we need to nationalize all of these things, right? Because we need to save you. They're the ones who got you into the problem in the first place. If you give them that power, they will ruin you. Because that's all government has ever done. That is the only thing that government is good at. And very quickly, I like hearing myself. You came to my podcast, bro. I didn't come to yours. You came to mine. The idea of a podcast is to speak. If I wasn't speaking, what the hell would be the point of you being here? So I can just free you from your misery like that. Now you don't have to listen to me speak. I'll just speak to myself and to the people who want to listen. And you can go off and do something better with your life, like be wrong in other podcasts. So good luck to you, sir. I hope you'll have a great time. Snippets, how you doing, sir? Stephen, I don't know how you are so well informed. I just like reading a lot, right? I just like reading a lot, and I like watching a lot of things. I have three main interests in life. These are economics, geopolitics, and kind of culture, but more political culture. I'm not that big on culture itself. Like, culture is interesting, but not that big on it. I'm more interested in political culture, and all of that is encaptured in my greatest love, which is Christianity. And so I spend pretty much every day of my life either reading about economics and reading all sorts of geopolitical books or watching podcasts about all manner of stuff. So that's sort of where I would say I have a lot of information about a lot of things. But if I were to say what I'm an expert on, I'd probably argue mostly economics. Not so much geopolitics. Geopolitics I just find fascinating. I just like it very much. But I wouldn't say I'm an expert in geopolitics. I like economics most. So that's sort of the thing. That's where for me at least most of my interests lie. The issue is the belief that humans are inherently good versus inherently bad. Socialists believe people are inherently good. You're not wrong. And that's actually something that I want to start with in today's stream. Okay, so let's first start at the beginning. I have a story that we're going to discuss at the end with President Ramaphosa because I think there's some big things that you have to understand about that. But I want to start at the beginning. I want to start with this new movement that I'll call Christian Marxists. This would be Tucker Carlson's, who have now joined the ranks of Christian Marxists or Christian socialists. I'm sure he wouldn't want to call himself a Marxist, but definitely a socialist to some extent. And I promise this is going to be necessary. I want to lay this out before we speak about what is coming next in South Africa. So let's start with, can a Christian be a Marxist? Can a Christian, or should Christians be socialists? It's a big question, right? It's a very big question. And it's one that I think is super important. It's definitely something that we have to talk about. So one of the big passages that is almost always used by sort of Christian socialists to prove that Jesus himself was a socialist is from Mark 10. So in Mark 10, we get this fundamental verse from Jesus. And Jesus, looking at him, loved him and said to him, "You lack one thing. Go, sell all that you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come follow me." And the socialists go, see, that's all we're asking. We're just saying, take care of the poor. Jesus himself says, take care of the poor. So clearly, to be a Christian and to follow Jesus means give to the poor. All right. Case closed, right? Except you have to read the verse in context. Because the Bible isn't just individual verses put together like the Quran. The Quran, every single individual verse stands in and of itself. The Bible is completely different. Mark is the entire Gospel of Mark, which makes up the entire Gospel of Jesus Christ from the perspective of Mark. Every single time Mark writes, there are specific things that Mark is writing about. And you will oftentimes see that Mark will write about a day that they spent with Jesus, and it'll start in the morning where Jesus starts teaching them things, and then it will progress throughout the day. And all of that is part of one story, one teaching that lies in context of that one teaching. And the greatest example I will have for you of this is, imagine you and I are discussing the rugby between the Springboks and New Zealand. And, as we're talking, I'm telling you, man, the Springboks are 100% going to beat New Zealand. We have the better forward pack. We have the better scrum half, the better fly half, the better centers, the better wings. We are just superior in every single way to New Zealand. This Saturday, South Africa is going to murder New Zealand. Now you leave and you go to another friend of yours, and this friend starts talking to you about how violent South Africans are. And he's like, man, these South Africans, their murder rates, it's absolutely insane how violent these guys are. And you go, yeah, I was just speaking to Stefan, and Stefan told me on Saturday they're going to murder New Zealand. Would you say that you've represented my argument fairly? Of course not. Because in the context of what I was talking about, I was clearly speaking about on the rugby field. But because you took my conversation out of context and you took one sentence that I said and you used it in a different context, does not mean that you represented me fairly. So let's look at the actual passage, shall we? It's always important. When you do Bible study, you want to do it in context. So, the rich man. And as he was setting out on his journey, a man ran up and knelt before him and asked him, "Good teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good except God alone. You know the commandments. Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness, do not defraud, honor your father and your mother." And he said to him, "Teacher, all these I have kept from my youth." Now remember, this young man is asking Jesus, "How can I follow you?" And Jesus says to him, "Follow the commandments." That's the most important part. Follow the commandments. And Jesus lists to him the commandments that are important for a human being to follow in order to follow Christ. And the young man says, "But I'm doing all of these things. I'm doing all of these things. What else can I actually do?" And Jesus says, "Okay, you lack one thing. Go and sell all that you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come follow me." Disheartened by the saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. And Jesus looked around and said to his disciples, "How difficult it will be for those who have wealth to enter the kingdom of God." Right there, you have the full context. Jesus was not saying that you can't be rich. Jesus was not saying that you have to sell all that you have. What is the context? This young man loves his money more than he loves Christ. Because he asked, "I want to follow you." And when Jesus said to him, "Sell everything you have," he had a choice. My possessions or my eternal salvation? And he chose his possessions. And that's why Jesus says it will be harder for a rich man to enter into heaven than for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. It's not because you're not allowed to be rich. It's because when you make money, it's so easy to become reliant on that money rather than be reliant on Christ. So the passage in no way, shape, or form suggests that everyone should sell their stuff and give it to the poor. The passage says that you should not be married to your stuff. You shouldn't love your stuff more than what you love Christ. So that is point blank, number one, very important to understand, right? That passage, whenever they use it, I want to climb up a wall because it just proves how little they know. And so, in order to show you just how exactly the Bible speaks about what we should be doing and what exactly is the Christian viewpoint, go to Ecclesiastes 3:12-13. I perceived that there is nothing better for them than to be joyful and to do good as long as they live. Also, that everyone should eat and drink and take pleasure in all his toil. This is God's gift to man. Genesis 2:15. The Lord took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. Proverbs. Whoever is slack in his work is a brother to him who destroys. Proverbs 14:23. In all toil there is profit, but mere talk tends only to poverty. Ephesians 4:28. Let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his own hands, so that he may have something to share with anyone in need. Again, going to Ecclesiastes 5:18-20. Behold, what I have seen to be good and fitting is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun, the few days of his life that God has given him. For this is his lot, that everyone should work. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil. This is the gift of God. In other words, whether you're poor and working or whether you're rich and working, you should give thanks to God because this is the gift that God has given you. For he will not much remember the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with joy in his heart. Proverbs 12:24. The hand of the diligent will rule, while the slothful will be put to forced labor. This is the Bible's teachings on socialism. The diligent will rule. The one who works hard, who puts in the effort, will rule. While the slothful, the lazy git that just wants, will become a slave. He'll be forced to do labor. So apparently Christianity teaches socialism. Instead, it clearly doesn't. Right? It clearly doesn't. Then we can actually go over to, this is 2 Timothy 2. In 2 Timothy 2, verse 5, an athlete is not crowned unless he competes according to the rules. It is the hardworking farmer who ought to have the first share of the crops. Now think about what socialism preaches and think about what I just told you 2 Timothy 2 says. The hardworking farmer deserves the first pick of his crops. Socialism says, purely by breathing, you deserve everything that you want. Screw the hard worker. The hard worker must give his stuff to you. These two verses are not compatible, but it gets even worse. 2 Thessalonians 3:9-11 says, it was not because we do not have that right, but to give you in ourselves an example to imitate. For even when we were with you, we would give you this command. If anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat. For we hear that some among you walk in idleness, not busy at work, but busy bodies. Does that sound like socialism to you? This is from the Bible. This is Paul speaking. Now you see, the lie that socialists sell is that socialism is about taking care of the poor. That's the lie. But that's, of course, not what socialism is. Socialism is about control of the elite. Socialism is about handing the means of production and freedom to the elite so that they can dish out to all as they believe everyone deserves. Socialism at its core is a heresy. Because socialism is effectively man saying to God, we can do better. We know that you promise that perfection and utopia will be in heaven and ultimately for eternity in the New Jerusalem. We understand that, but we actually think you made a mistake. We believe that we can create utopia here on earth. But what socialism never seems to contend with is that the very people who are meant to bring about utopia are eventually the corrupt robber barons that oppress the people. Because human corruption is everywhere. Human corruption is the problem. That is why capitalism is, by extrapolation, the only system that Christians can support. Because at least with capitalism, you are free to pursue your own dreams. And if you are corrupt, you pay the price for that. You're not being made a slave of the system. You have the freedom in order to choose. But let's do one final verse, shall we? One final verse about how socialistic the Bible is, and then we'll talk about some of the mistakes that is being made. But a man named Ananias, with his wife Sapphira, sold a piece of property. This is in Acts 5, 1-10. Now, a little bit of backstory here. Acts 5 discusses the church in Jerusalem, where this church decided together to sell all of their belongings and pool all of their wealth and then take care of everyone from this pooled wealth. So everyone would work for the church, and the church would pay everyone's salaries and would make sure that everyone has what they need, right? This was a decision. They weren't forced to do it. This was a decision. So Sapphira sold a piece of property, and with his wife's knowledge, he kept back for himself some of the proceeds and brought only a part of it and laid it at the apostles' feet. But Peter said, Ananias, why has Satan filled your heart to lie to the Holy Spirit and to keep back for yourself part of the proceeds of the land? While it remained unsold, did it not remain your own? And after it was sold, was it not at your disposal? Peter is saying to him, this was your property. You didn't have to sell it. Right? It was yours to do with as you pleased. And after you sold it, this was your money. You could literally spend it in whichever way you want. Why did you lie? Why come to us and say, oh, this is all the money that I have, but you know that you've kept some of that money back for yourself? Like, what the hell are you playing at, right? And then he goes, why is it that you have contrived this deed in your heart? You have not lied to man, but to God. When Ananias heard these words, he fell down and breathed his last. Again, does Christianity preach socialism? The answer is no. The answer is a firm and fervent no. Socialism is a heresy, and make no mistake, socialism is about control. It's about the elites gaining the upper hand over the masses and then centrally planning the lives of the masses. It has nothing to do with the poor. The vast majority of socialists, in fact, I would go so far as to say that every single socialist that I've ever met is not a socialist because they actually care about the poor. They're a socialist because they're lazy. They don't want to work. They don't want to contribute. They hate the fact that they have to have responsibilities. Instead, they just want to sit around lazy as hell, do nothing, and just have the government take care of them. That has been my experience with every single socialist out there. And when I actually speak to the people who are sort of vying to become leaders of socialist revolutions, these are not people that like humans very much. These are, in fact, people who don't really care about the suffering of humans, not even in the slightest. And that is actually, in my opinion, one of the biggest issues that we're going to have to talk about. But that's going to be part of the next conversation that we have, the next topic that we're going to cover, because there's something really big on the horizon in South Africa, and I think that's gonna that's gonna affect a lot of people. So we'll get into that in a second. But what's your opinion on socialism? What's your idea on socialism and specifically Christianity and socialism? I'd love to hear your thoughts. CR, I of course cannot respond to you while I'm busy, right? I'm busy. And so of course I can't respond to you. And 100% gluttony is a sin. 100% gluttony is a sin. I am a sinner. I have never pretended that I am not a sinner or that I am a saint in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I would go so far as to say that I am perhaps one of the greatest sinners that has ever lived. Perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable. What is your point, sir? Or was your point just to call me fat in a sort of, ooh, gotcha way? I mean, you did say that I wasn't going to respond to your comment. I did respond to your comment. So, want to have a back and forth? Want to bring up something else, or was your point just to call me fat? Just in case someone else missed it. But guys, just so that you know, for those of you that is in chat at the moment, if you didn't already realize, I am in fact fat. CR7 really wants you guys to know that. He wasn't sure if you guys could see it. Could you tell? Right? If you guys are shocked by this, hey, just so you know, I am in fact fat. Reinhard, thank you very much. I really appreciate that, sir. Thank you. Socialism can never work in a fallen world. True. I think some form of safety net should exist, but it should be voluntary. The free market of donations is more effective than just taking money and giving to people. You can do more with less. I actually agree with that, right? So I do actually think that you should have a voluntary safety net. Because I think if you actually told people that, look, this safety net, first and foremost, this safety net is going to help clean up your streets. It's going to help, you don't have to deal with all of these homeless people running around all the time and creating all sorts of chaos and whatnot. A lot of people will just give money as a result of that. But more importantly, if it is voluntary, I can remove my money if I feel that you're not actually doing the job that you should be doing, right? I can actually remove that money. I can actually say, well, actually, I gave you money to take care of the poor, and you're not taking care of the poor, so I'm just not going to give you money. Whereas if the state does it, there's literally nothing you can do, right? If the state does it, you're just done. So from my perspective, the state has no authority or ability to take care of the poor. No authority or ability. So that leaves you with one other option. If indeed the state is going to do it, why? Because it's clearly not to help the people. That's not what the state is after. Providing meals in the local community is way more effective than government-run systems usually. Werner, absolutely true. But I'm not even saying that only churches should do it, right? Churches should do it, 100%. But not only churches. You can have, charities and stuff that provide these services as well. There's nothing wrong with that. I am a firm believer in giving to your church, and I do every single month. I'm a firm believer in the Great Commission of the church and for the church to actually be empowered and enabled by believers in order to bring the word of Jesus Christ to the masses. So I'm a full believer in the role of the church. But I also recognize that there are secular institutions that can also do it. I'm just not convinced that the government should be in charge of doing it because I don't see the government as being anywhere near capable of doing it. The answer is Jesus' word in Matthew 7:12, and after you understand that, read James' letter 1:22, and you don't understand socialism. The regulation is in Matthew 7:12. Matthew 7:12. Let me quickly go there. Okay, so the golden rule, so whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them, for this is the law of and the prophets. Okay, So that, according to you, proves what? Because right now it is just a choice thing, right? If you want others to do good to you, you should also do good to others. And I fully agree with that. But that's definitely not compulsion. Your next verse that you said I should look at is James. James what again? Um, James 1:22. Okay, let's head to James. James 1:22. Here we go. But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. How exactly? Again, I'm not entirely sure what your point is. Okay, I'm just gonna mute this guy because that's insane. Um, Keep in mind, Revelation chapter 7, curse Israel and be cursed. Important evangelist for Jesus will be Jesus. So Scott, I'm not necessarily first, I don't think that's Revelation. I think that's from the Old Testament. Those who curse Israel will be cursed as well. Um, I'm not necessarily. I'm not necessarily on that track, right? That's definitely not the track that I'm on. I believe that you can be critical of Israel. I think that's perfectly fine. You're allowed to be critical of Israel, um, because and I recognize that this is an ongoing debate within the church. You get the dispensationalists who believe that Israel is still the people of God. I don't hold that view. So, in my view, Israel became Christians. We are the people of God. And so, all Jews must convert to Christianity in order to remain God's people. That doesn't mean that God isn't done or is done with the Jews. We know that God still has a plan for the Jews, but we also know from the wording that Paul uses that's not going to be a nice plan, right? Like what God is going to do to the Jews isn't going to be nice. It's going to be for their own good, but it's going to be punishment ultimately. So I'm not necessarily convinced of. I'm open to it, like if I saw enough evidence that Israel should still be considered as the people of God, I'd be open to it, but that's definitely not the view that I hold, right? Um, Lord's house is much higher than anything on the dark side, but not because they're special judgment, but still God's chosen people. But He will complete the promise for them. I'm sure. I'm sure there's a lot of things that everyone still needs to know, right? Stephen, I'm getting a feeling there is a psyop operation on you today. David Smith, probably. I mean, look, we're dealing with all sorts of weird stuff, right? And everyone, it's always going to bring in some weird people that have some weird demands and claims and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, uh, TJ, Jesus became man because unlike the gods of every other religion, my God did not stand apart from the suffering of humans. This was the whole purpose of Jesus becoming man. So, Jesus' entire life serves two fundamental purposes. The Old Testament, in its entirety, is meant to prove two things. The Old Testament first shows the holiness of God, right? How holy He is and how impossible it is to live like God. Because the second part of that is even with all of the laws, the Israelites continuously fail. They are constantly walking after false gods. They are constantly, and they write all of this down, which is one of the ways in which we know that the book isn't fabricated, that the Old Testament is true. Because most people If we go historically and look at all of the historical evidence from different civilizations, they don't write about the embarrassing periods of their own time. For that, you usually have to go to other people writing about them. The Israelites write all of their failures, the amount of times that they were taken into slavery by other nations because they failed to follow God. They write all of it down, right? It shows you, that's the whole point of the Old Testament, is the holiness of God is completely and utterly unobtainable for man. In ourselves, we cannot appease God. We cannot live good enough lives to actually live in his house, to be part of his kingdom. We're just too broken. And David gives us the first insight into the heart of God. And this is always such a beautiful story for me in the Old Testament. So David is one of two kings in Israel that is declared by God to be righteous in the eyes of God. God calls David a righteous, the most righteous king of Israel, David. But let's look at David's story. Now, all of us here, if you're a man, you have struggled with lust in your life, right? You have. You see a beautiful woman and you have thoughts and feelings. Every single one of you have had that moment where, it's 7 or 8 o'clock at night. You have this woman that you work with that is absolutely driving you insane, and now you start watching porn. That's lust, right? So here's David's lust. David stands on his roof of the palace, and he sees Bathsheba bathing on the roof. She's taking a bath. And he lusts after her and he calls her. He sends his servants to bring Bathsheba to him. And he sleeps with her. And Bathsheba is now with child. The problem is Bathsheba is married. And Bathsheba's husband is on the front lines. He's fighting a war. So David knows that if this child is born, Bathsheba's husband will know that this child is not his. And according to Israeli or Jewish law, Bathsheba will be stoned to death. So David devises another plan. David says, okay, I'm going to call him back. He needs to come back fast. And then I'm going to make him sleep with his wife. Right? I'm just going to tell him go home. He's been on the front lines for 2 years almost. Of course he's going to go home and do some stuff to his wife. And now, right, if he goes back and the child is born, he'll just think this is my child. It's all good, right? But the guy comes back and he reports to the king. And the king asks him about questions. And the king says to him, okay, you may go home. Tomorrow you'll go back to the front lines. And he says, no, I will not go home. This man is so honorable that he refuses to spend the night with his wife in his warm bed while his friends and his confidants and his fellow soldiers are dying on the front lines. So he sleeps in the barracks. He will not go home to his wife. David's like, damn, okay, this isn't going to work. So David devises another plan. David devises to send this guy off to the most dangerous part of the front and to give him a task impossible to achieve, knowing that he will die. And he does. So David, compare now your worst sin of lust. Compare your worst version of lust. Watched a little bit of porn. David slept with a married woman, made her pregnant, tried to deceive her husband into thinking it's his child, and when all of that failed, his sin made him kill a man. For a woman, for lust. Right? Why does God then say that David is the most righteous of all the kings of Israel? What is it that makes God give David that honor? When Nathanael the prophet comes to David and he tells David about this wicked servant that have done all these wicked things, and he asks David, what would you do? And David says, I will kill this man. Nathanael says to him, "It is you." And for the first time, David's eyes open and David realizes that he is the wicked and evil servant. The things that he has done is the wicked and evil servant. And what does David do? He rips his clothes, he puts on sackcloth, he throws the ash on his head, and he ridicules and embarrasses himself in front of the whole of Israel, begging God for forgiveness. It shows the heart of God in that story. God knew man wasn't capable. But what God wanted was reliance. Man needs to understand that God is the only salvation. There is no salvation except through God. And so that's what David was. David was the only king in Israel that never walked after false gods. Never, not once. He never worshipped false gods. He never tried to walk after false gods. He punished those who worshipped false gods. And so that is what made David the most righteous of kings. So we have the Old Testament that shows us that God is so holy that we cannot appease him. And then Jesus comes. God becomes flesh. Why? First, Jesus has to prove that he and he alone can appease God, even as a man. Why? Because he has to become the perfect sacrifice. And in order for him to be the perfect sacrifice for our sins, because our sins demand blood, the Old Testament makes this very clear. It's from the first story that we get of murder in Genesis, Cain and Abel. When the Lord asks Cain, "Where is your brother?" And Cain says, "I don't know, I'm not my brother's keeper." And the Lord says to him, "The blood of your brother cries out for justice." Your sins demand a price, a punishment. So how can you appease that punishment if you yourself are wicked and evil and fallen? So God comes down, he becomes flesh for us. He lives a life free of sin so that he can get onto that cross and take the punishment that is rightfully ours. The punishment that belongs to us. And he rises on the third day and he goes back, and now he sits on the right-hand side of God, and we are told that he makes constant intercession for us. So that's how God becomes man, poops and eats and drinks with us, because he had to make himself a part of our suffering. Because he loves us that much. He gave up being a king to come live as a servant for us. That's how God does that. And that's why I choose to believe in him. That's why he is the only one worthy of being believed in. All right. So with that answer out of the way, let's get into the main topic here. And I think you guys will agree there's something strange going on right now. Something very, very strange going on right now. The economic freedom fighters just posted this yesterday. Julius Malema, the only solution to this country is MK, EFF, ANC. That is the future of South Africa. It's an interesting development. And I say that it's an interesting development because the EFF has famously hated the ANC. You guys will remember how the EFF said that they will not work with the ANC, that they will not form coalitions with the ANC. So what exactly What exactly happened? And I promise you, I'm painting a picture for all of you. We're getting to the good stuff in a second, but you first have to understand this story breaks. We covered it day before yesterday, I think, or on Tuesday. We covered this story, or was it yesterday? At some point in the last week, we covered this story. The ANC enters into a brand new coalition with the EFF, and Panyaza Lesufi actually states that MK is next. The ANC in Gauteng will go into a coalition with the MK, which will give them a majority lead and a full majority in Johannesburg to do pretty much whatever they want. Now, the reason this is brand new is not because the ANC and the EFF has not been in local coalitions before. It's because for the first time ever, the ANC actually gives a prime position to the EFF. The EFF leader of Gauteng is now the MEC of Finance in Gauteng. The MEC of Finance is a very powerful position in any coalition. The problem is Panyaza Lesufi did this against the wishes of Fikile Mbalula and Cyril Ramaphosa. The ANC broadly was not on board with this. They did not want this to happen. So what exactly is going on, friends? What exactly is going on? Well, Ramaphosa is under attack. If you guys remember, on Tuesday, I told you that the GNU will not exist past in 2027. Because I told you, Cyril Ramaphosa will be voted out of office on the in 2027, when the ANC finally has their national conference to choose the next leader. The next leader will almost definitely, as things go right now, the next leader will not be, as a lot of analysts try to pretend, Patrice Motsepe. The problem is Cyril Ramaphosa has had very little success. In fact, Cyril Ramaphosa has overseen the biggest decline the ANC has ever seen. Patrice Motsepe represents to the ANC more of Cyril Ramaphosa, the same kind of politics. Something very interesting is happening. Before we get into what is happening here, there's some foundational information that you have to know so that everything else now makes sense. You have heard in the past, analysts have said it, people all over the world, well, not all over the world, but all over South Africa, will constantly tell you that there are two factions within the ANC. Well, actually, most of the analysts will tell you there are three factions within the ANC. There are the constitutionalists, there are the communists, and then there's the RET, or the Rapid Economic Transformation faction. These three factions are constantly in sort of debate with one another. I believe that this is the wrong view. You see, because there are people, and Frans Cronje, I believe, falls into this trap quite often. Nothing against him. I think Frans Cronje is a brilliant analyst, but I think where a lot of people make the mistake is a lot of people think that the constitutionalists aren't communists, or that the RET guys aren't communists. They're all communists. They just debate about what's the right way to get there. But they're all communists. There's not a single person in the ANC who isn't a full-blown communist. The only thing is the debate on the method of how they arrive there. And so my argument is that really there are two factions in the ANC. There are the constitutionalist communists, and there's the rapid economic transformational communists. But those are the only two factions that actually exist within the ANC. It's important to understand, however, that we're not dealing with your Chinese socialists, who are actually really more World Economic Forum stakeholder capitalists, right? Or shall we rather say state capitalists or state communists, however you want to put it, but it's communism in a different bend, right? That's not the ANC. The ANC's version of communism is Soviet Union style 1960s communism. Now, you might ask, but Stefan, why? Why would the ANC, after all of the failures of communism, why would they still want this? And the answer is failure for whom? Who is failing? Now, this is where things get super interesting. From the perspective of the slow constitutionalists, their belief in why communism fails is very important. And it's super important to understand this. Now, the slow communists, that's Cyril Ramaphosa. Cyril Ramaphosa, Fikile Mbalula. These are the guys that will use the constitution in order to get to communism. Their belief on why communism failed in the Soviet Union, in Mao's China, in Venezuela, in Cuba, in most of Africa, is because of Western sanctions. It's not communism that failed. It's the West that so desperately wanted communism to fail that the West sabotaged it. So the slow constitutionalists have this new approach. Their approach is slow and steady. We move the needle just enough every single time that we get closer to the ultimate communist takeover, but it doesn't happen so suddenly that the world gets spooked and then sanctions arrive. Right? So unlike what happened in Zimbabwe, where the land was taken and overnight the whole world went, well, no more trade. You guys are crazy. The constitutionalist says, no. We have to move slower. We do want to take the land, but it has to happen in such a way that the world doesn't notice. So we'll move slowly, we'll get there eventually. On the other side, the rapid economic transformationalists, they don't really think that communism failed. Because as I said, failed for whom? Are the members of the ZANU-PF struggling in Zimbabwe? No. Did the members of the Soviet Communist Party suffer? No. Did the members of Mao's CCP suffer? No. Does Kim Jong-un suffer? No. Yes, the people suffer, but the leaders are beyond rich and powerful. You effectively become a de facto king. You can do whatever you want. You can suspend the elections. You can suspend any free and fair elections, and you can make buttloads of money. And yeah, your own people starve, but who gives a crap? Because again, they look across Africa and what do they see? Most Africans just accept this. You go to Zimbabwe. The people of Zimbabwe aren't up in arms. The people of Zimbabwe aren't screaming and yelling at the top of their lungs that this is an unfair system. They have accepted the system and they've simply moved on. And for the most part, it's because most of them are not really impacted. Have you ever asked yourself, why is it that the Eastern Cape is the only province where the ANC never loses support? Why does the ANC lose support in every other province except for the Eastern Cape? The answer is actually quite simple. Because the actions of the ANC has zero effect on the lives of the people in the Eastern Cape. The people in the Eastern Cape live in rural villages. They take care of themselves. They get their own water from the rivers. They grow their own food. They exist like their ancestors did. So from their perspective, as long as the ANC gives them $350 a month, it's as good a party as any. They don't care about much more because they don't know about much more. And so the ANC support in Eastern Cape is solidified. It will not lose support there because those people just don't care. The radical economic transformationalists look at that and realize this is the opportunity for them to get stupidly rich, and they don't have to do anything. They never again have to worry about how good they're treating their own people. They don't have to care about things like economic growth or whatever. They just have to care about how can we make more money, and the people will have to follow. So this brings us to our story today. There is a movement currently in South Africa to oust Cyril Ramaphosa. The ANC, specifically the radical economic transformationalists, are trying to get rid of him. So this is super interesting. News 24 gains access to a classified report. Now, none of this is yet, I should say, on the surface, this doesn't look suspicious. This is News 24's job, right? About Phala. And what's incredibly interesting about this report is that an independent investigation proves, or at least shows, according to this report, that Ramaphosa not only was part of a shadow network, and that's where that money actually came from. But when Ramaphosa found out that the money was missing, Ramaphosa was using state funds to investigate and find the money without opening an official police investigation. And this report proves that this is exactly what it is. Now, the guy who wrote the initial report claims that he didn't write that report. This isn't his report. Or at least the guy that wrote the report that the report was based on, he claims he didn't write it. This is not what he said, although the official investigation says this is what he said, and they found the evidence that links the president to Phala, to the robberies, and to the underhanded business, as well as abusing state funds to hide the crime. This is huge. Then we find out Julius Malema about a month ago wrote to the High Court of South Africa demanding that the High Court release their suggestion, shall we say, on the impeachment of Cyril Ramaphosa related to the Phala judgment. And the High Court says it'll be ready in a month. So one more month and you will have your document. Because the High Court is currently investigating the matter and deciding whether or not it rises to the level of impeachment. In my estimation, all of this is planned. All of this is planned. The ANC isn't blind. A brand new survey just found that the ANC's support nationwide has disappeared. The newest report shows that the ANC sits at about 33% of national support. Paul Mashatile and the radical economic transformationalists are not blind. They are seeing the destruction of Cyril Ramaphosa, and they are frustrated. They believe that there is only one way to save the ANC and to save the revolution, which of course just means making ourselves rich, and that is to bring together the revolutionary forces of this country. Because from their perspective, that is what the people voted for. Their belief is that the people of South Africa are sick and tired of the power share between the ANC and the DA, and instead they want to go with the ANC. And I believe that Panyaza Lesufi, who is actually a close confidant of Mr. Paul Mashatile, I believe that Paul Mashatile told Panyaza Lesufi, do this. Let's taste it. Let's see how the public reacts to this. Because I think in about a month from now, there is going to be a judgment from the High Court of South Africa showing that President Cyril Ramaphosa was most likely involved in some unscrupulous activities, and the ANC is going to face a motion of no confidence or perhaps impeachment. If that happens, I'm almost willing to bet that for the first time ever, we may actually see a president vacate office on the first vote. Because I think Paul Mashatile and the RET faction has garnered enough support within the ANC by merely going, look at what he's done to us. They're not going to wait for the local government elections, because by then it will be too late. This, in my opinion, is the communist takeover. This is where South Africa will be. I'm actually willing to bet that within the next 2 years, South Africa will have a coalition between the ANC, the EFF, and the MK. And if you look at what the MK is currently doing, if you look at the bills that are currently being passed by both the MK and the EFF, some very interesting stuff happens. So first, we have the changing of the curriculum, which is actually something that is a little bit separate, but at the same time, we've spoken about this yesterday. The changing of this curriculum is the final erasure of Afrikaner culture in South Africa, of white culture in South Africa, I should say. It is ultimately saying to the Afrikaner in South Africa, you have no past, no history. We do not acknowledge your existence in Africa. And instead, we will teach our version of events. This, coincidentally, is one of the stages of genocide. Just so that you know, erasing a people's history is a good step towards genocide. But never mind that. Then you have the MK with a private members bill. We discussed this also on Tuesday, which effectively they want to remove Section 235 from the Constitution, removing the ability for self-determination. Very interesting timing. Very interesting timing. If I am correct, the EFF and the MK and the ANC full well understand a coalition between the three of them will suddenly make more moderate South Africans, shall we say, people who are flirting with the left. Even those people will be like, oh, never mind. Maybe now we do need an independent Cape. This is clearly not going to work. So they want to take that off the board as quickly as possible. There's no such thing as self-determination in South Africa. We've removed that section from the Constitution. Then we go to the second private members bill that the MK has tabled, which is they want to remove and completely change the Constitution to allow for the expropriation without compensation. Not nil compensation, not expropriation only in certain circumstances. They want the government to have full access to whatever land the government wants. If the government says, we want your house, they can get it. If they want your car, they can get it. If they want whatever they want, they are allowed to take it. That's what the MK wants. Then you have the EFF. They just introduced a brand new bill that will force all government departments to insource all government activities. Why is it insourcing? Because it allows for a lot more looting. Right? A lot more looting that can suddenly happen. Because now all of those people that previously you would have had to set up companies and it would have made it a little bit different. Now they can just come work for the government and you can just pay them a massive salary. Right? Even if they can't do the job, it doesn't really matter. So you have all of these pieces of information. And I genuinely believe that if you start to put all of that together, You have the blueprint that is the communist takeover of South Africa. And I believe that we will see this. I want to go so far as to say before the end of this year, but purely because politics can sometimes move very slowly, I'm willing to say end of next year. Before the end of next year, we will have a ANC, EFF, MK coalition, and these three will move at lightning speed. Lightning speed. And they will take everything that isn't nailed down. And if it is nailed down, they'll take the nails too. Because it's now or never. They either install the communist revolution now, or they risk losing people to the DA, to the Freedom Front, because for the first time in the history of South Africa, there are black people looking at, not for the first, there's always been black people that has voted DA and that has supported the Freedom Front. That has always existed. But for the first time in South Africa's history, you have a lot of black people that believe the whites will bring back apartheid, which is now sort of looking at the DA and the Freedom Front and those guys in the GNU and going, they didn't bring back apartheid. The ANC, specifically the radical economic transformationists, that is unacceptable. Because they understand that it will lead to a bleeding of support. And then they'll suddenly have to share power with this white party that they obviously don't want to share power with. So that's the big story for today. I believe this is, if there's ever been a story that matters, this is that story. So what do you guys think? This will happen by mid 2027 and SA will be gone. Anita, I can see it happen by then. Rise is our king. He will. He always be. Benny, absolutely agree with you. 100%. CR, how you doing? Gamers Republic, how you doing, sir? Apostate Prophet is really good. I agree. I have tremendous respect for Apostate Prophet. So does no one have any thoughts on what I just discussed? Anything you want to add? Maybe questions that you want to ask? I'm happy to answer anything that you would want to know. Or are you guys all just sitting there thinking, well, where the hell am I going to go? They never were. They were never separate. See, oh, sorry. I have my suspicions, right? I've always thought that there is some kind of unholy link between the EFF and the ANC. I've always had my suspicions that the EFF was merely the radical wing of the ANC because it allowed the ANC to sort of not feel the heat, right? So when Donald Trump, for example, calls out Julius Malema for singing what we all obviously know as hate speech, kill the bird, kill the farmer, the ANC is able to go, well, it's not us. Hey, this guy has freedom of speech. He can say whatever he wants, right? So I do agree with that. I hate this because these guys always hate the ANC until they get a cut of the money. Literally, EFF is cool with this because they will be running the finances, as I understand. How is that not bribery? The CC, because they never actually cared, right? It's always been about power. I can guarantee you. There is no world, zero world in which any of your freedom forces give a crap about the people of South Africa. They care about themselves and they care about money, and that's it. How do we stop it? Now the GNU don't look so bad, but it is still not working. True. I'm gonna put two of these comments together. Horrific Raven, how you doing? Do you still have any hope for RSA? I do. I do. And Mike, I'll deal with yours as well. How can we stop this? And also Palhami, or Palham. So first, let's deal with, do I have any hope for South Africa? I always have hope, because my hope is not in myself or in man, but in God. Right? I know that God is in charge. I know that whatever happens, it happens according to His sovereign will. And while I don't always understand why things happen, I do know that they happen, because He allows them to happen. And if He allowed it, it's because it is good. Uh, just because I don't understand it doesn't make it not good. It just means that I have no ability to understand almost anything of God, right? So I always have hope. I'm never without hope. Uh, if you're asking me from a human perspective, so you know, again, the answer is yes. The world is absolutely filled with examples of catastrophe and suffering, but it's also filled with stories of revivals, people who stood up, and evil regimes that crumbled. And I believe the ANC, as powerful as they may seem, I believe the ANC has never been closer to complete and utter collapse. And I think the thing that the ANC underestimates, because the radical economic transformationalists look at the revolutions that happen in Africa and they think, see, we can do the same here and we'll be rich. It doesn't matter if the people die or if the people starve, we won't starve, and so who cares? The one mistake that they make is that every single one of these African countries that tried this revolution, ultimately, where did the people go from that country? They came here. They're living in South Africa now. So now the problem is, if you did the exact same revolution here in South Africa, where do these South Africans go? All the other countries have already failed. So where do these South Africans go? The answer is they have nowhere to go. They're stuck here. And that is dangerous. See, because people will choose peace almost always before war, except when there is no other option. If the option is oppression or war, most people will go or war. And I believe that is the future that South Africa will face. I believe that there will be a war. I believe that with all my heart. Benny, thank you so much for the 40, sir. Really appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're far too kind. Jesus, I am the way and the truth and the life. Truth. I agree with you, Benny. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate the donation. And I believe that that has to happen. I will not be the one to start it, and I don't think we should ever be the ones to start it. But at some point, I believe it's going to be inevitable. At some point, we're just going to have a fight. Look, our country is breaking. I don't want to sit here and be a negative Nelly. I don't want to constantly be the one to break your bubbles, right? And to rain on your parade and ruin your weekends with Friday afternoons filled with doom and gloom. But this country's done. I just saw this morning 2 billion rand looted from Pretoria. And that's just the money we know of. The Mbisa Hospital looted for billions. That's just the money we know of. Taxes out the wazoo. And even more taxes are incoming. SARS is now figuring out how to get AI to allow them to basically catch everyone, right? We have a shrinking tax base that is actually shrinking faster every single year. So that is being sped up, which means that if the government continues to increase the amount of money that they want SARS to collect. So the tax base is lowering. The amount of money that the government wants from SARS is increasing, which basically just means you have to tax people more. Most people have nothing left to give. We have one of the most unfair tax systems in the world. Like, let's just quickly discuss this. And before I even get going, let me make this clear. I am not arguing for you to not pay your taxes. For legal reasons, you need to understand this. I am not arguing for a tax boycott. I am just discussing the facts. Taxes is a social contract. The social contract is as follows. You, the government, provide certain services to me, the citizen. In exchange for said services, I pay you a fee to enable you to provide said services to me. What are those services? Keep me safe. That's the police and the military. Ensure transport, logistics. And 3, allow for the economy to grow to such an extent that I am free to pursue my own goals. Those are the 3 things that make up the social contract. What does the social contract look like in South Africa? Give us your money so that we can give it to this 90% of the other people that contribute nothing to the system. Right? Zilch, 0, nil. They contribute in no way, shape, or form to the system, but we're going to take from you and transfer your wealth to these people. In the process of doing this to you, so while taking all of your hard-earned money and giving it to the parasites, we are also going to ensure that you live in one of the most dangerous countries on earth. So we will not keep you safe. In fact, the people you oftentimes need protection from are the people that's supposed to protect you. Just so we're clear, right? So that's part 1 of the social contract not being upheld. And also, to go even further, we will not build any infrastructure or supply any logistical advantages. The roads in South Africa are falling apart. Train stations? What train stations? What train tracks? Most of it is run down and destroyed. Electricity? Barely hanging on. That's part 2 of the social contract, not being fulfilled. And part 3, grow the economy? No. For the last 20 years, the economy has not grown. It has shrunk. The economy in 2007 grows at an annual rate, I think it was about 2.something%. The South African population grows by more than that. So the economy isn't growing, it's shrinking. At the height of Jacob Zuma, we have 1.9% economic growth. At the height. That was the highest that he ever managed to get. The South African population grows at about 2.6% per year. That means that we are shrinking. The economy is not growing, it's shrinking, because economic growth has to be subtracted from population growth in order to get real growth. So we're not growing in real terms. Ramaphosa makes that even worse, because this man can't even hit 1% economic growth. In an era where every country is at least managing 1%, Ramaphosa and his lackeys are basically not even making it to 1%, right? That's the social contract. No safety, no security, no roads, no economy, and yet what you have, we will take and we will give to those who do nothing. How can that not be the clearest sign that this country has fallen? It is a matter of time before the citizens of South Africa, the tax-paying, economically active citizens of this country, go, we don't have anything left. You've taken everything. We have nothing. That is going to happen. There's no other way around this. The fact that it has not happened yet is actually surprising. But it needs to be understood. It is coming. And the ANC might not like it. They might argue this way or that way. But that's the reality on the ground. Love it or hate it, this is where we are. So do I have hope for South Africa? In the long run, yes. Yes, I believe that at some point we will get through this. And I think once we do, oh boy, are we going to grow at insane levels. If there's one thing the South African people have proved is that even with a government that is slamming every single brake, right? The car is in reverse. The brakes are on. They have one of those cables around the tree sort of pulling them back. The Afrikaner and the South African conservative just sort of, stands there and just pulls. Like it is, you can see the sweat. It's almost like blood that's coming out of them. Their shoulders are being ripped into by these ropes. They are tired, but they pull, and inch by inch, they pull this little thing forward. It's not going fast, but it's at least going a little. Now imagine if we finally get a government that lets go of the brakes. Imagine what happens. This country will explode. It'll be like nothing you've ever seen before. And that gives me an insane amount of hope. The problems in this country are caused primarily by our leaders. That means that we only have to get rid of them and we'll actually fix this country. And we will. In time, I believe we will. I hope that answers your question. I know it's a pretty long-winded one, but I hope that answers your question. Private sector should stop paying taxes and fix our own infrastructure. I will never say people should stop paying their taxes, because just be careful when you guys say stuff like that online, because it is technically illegal to say that. But you can get into serious trouble. It is a criminal offense to say people should stop paying taxes, because you are effectively motivating people to break the law, because it is illegal not to pay your taxes. Even though I don't quite understand how it's illegal, because if the social contract was broken by the government, why the hell are you still demanded or commanded to pay your half of it? I don't understand that, but I'm not a politician, so it probably makes sense. In India, main problem is corruption and civic sense of all the people, but Gen Z are smarter and know how to run a country. Now we throw this government and literally government, which probably impact India by 5. Arnav, how you doing, sir? I don't know much about Indian politics, just to be clear. I've seen a couple of people come in from India that ask me questions. I should be very clear. India is not it's not a country that I know a massive amount of. I know a little bit, just enough to get by, but until you guys get involved in some really big event around the world, I'm not really going to read super amounts of stuff about India. You guys are too chill. You're too friendly with everyone. You don't cause enough chaos. You guys should start poking a little bit. Like, I don't know, bomb Pakistan or something. Then we can talk. Don't bomb Pakistan, I'm just saying. What are we getting for our taxes? Zilts. Nothing. Zero. Absolutely nothing. But the parasites are getting something. Let's sabotage the saboteurs. 2 years. Damn, we should have got more than that. Bully the bullies. That's going to get clipped out of context. Either Crab, how you doing, bro? Yeah, well, I at least have the context to be like, well, that was clearly a joke. you know. Um, I would actually say, please don't do that. That would be crazy. That would be like, dude, Pakistan has nukes. That's a crazy country to attack. Um, is there anyone that has anything else that they would like to talk about quickly before I go and leave you guys to your weekend? I will be. I might be. I shouldn't say I will be. I might be live on Sunday over on Truth Report for the conference, the Congress for the DA. I might be live there. Um, it all depends on my church, right? Because I have to go to church first, and I usually leave church at about 12 o'clock. So when I get back home and they're still going, I'll jump on. If I'm not back when there's, if I'm back and they're done, then obviously I'm not going to be there. But Horrific Raven, I'm in Cape Town. But if you ask where am I from, I'm from the north of South Africa. So I was born in Polokwane or Pietersburg, lived in Pretoria for a while, and then moved to Cape Town. So I've been in Cape Town now for, oh, excuse me. I've been in Cape Town now for about 4 years. This is my fifth. Congrats about Truth Report. I saw you on that channel. Oh, there's Dominic. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Yeah, the Truth Report has been an interesting ride. Um, I haven't done that much with them yet, but I have enjoyed being a part of it. And I know myself and Ronaldo have been speaking about doing a podcast together as well. So, when we can find the time to actually do a podcast together, we'll definitely figure that out. Because I like to talk to Ronaldo Goos. No way, ek bly in Pietersburg. Crazy dude. David, well done. Well done. Yeah, I was born in Pietersburg, went to Pietersburg High School. Lived there pretty much my entire, yeah, well, actually, I lived there my entire school career. I remember when it was still Saddles, and then it became Chandler's. And I think today it's called Nguni, the bar. If it's still called Nguni, I haven't been there in 5 years, so I genuinely don't know how it's changed or not. But yeah, you can't even employ on merit, so we have to employ people that can't do the job, else we get fined. So we are effectively forced to sink our own businesses if we want to expand them. IW, that's just another part of it that is going to crash the system. I was born in Pretoria, brought up in Cape Town, currently living in India. Wow, very nice. What made you go to India? Like that's a crazy move. From Pretoria, Cape Town to India. That's absolutely insane. Justice Unray, how you doing, bro? On a side note, one of the most famous South African in India people have tattoos. If that person, he draws crowds like crazy. Can you guess the name? No idea. Justice Unray, zero idea. I genuinely, I don't know a lot of famous people. And I definitely don't know their names. So it's sort of whatever. All right, guys, I have to go. I promised a friend of mine I'll help him with his PC because he's having trouble recording stuff for YouTube. So I'm going to go because I have to drive. He's in the next town over from me, so I have to drive there quickly. Although it's not that far; it's about a 15-minute drive. But still, I have to go do that. Then I have to go to the vape store and pick up some vape juice for the weekend because I have a birthday party tomorrow for a friend of mine who's turning 21. So that's going to be another full weekend. That's effectively Dude, these full weekends. I would just want like a weekend where I'm doing nothing. Like that would be good. Just one weekend where I'm literally doing nothing. I need that. I'm good one, man. Good stream. I had fun trolling the SMS. Gamer Republic, as always, you enjoyed it, sir. I'm happy to hear that. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I know AB de Villiers. He's a good guy. I don't know him personally. I know of him. So that guy I know. He bats like a crazy person. Kimmy, thank you so much for popping in. Best weekend ever, doing as little as possible for as long as possible. I wouldn't say that it's the best weekend ever. I haven't had a weekend where I have done nothing for probably like 3 or 4 months now. That I've just been like nonstop every single weekend, something going on. And I'm now at a place where I just need like one weekend where I do nothing, where I can just sit, I can read, I can maybe play some video games because I haven't played games in a while. I kind of nowadays I just play a little bit of team fight tactics and that's it because I can play for maybe like 10 minutes or so and then go do work again. So I just need like one weekend of doing nothing. But overall, I actually prefer to do stuff. I want to be busy. Desiree, how you doing? Welcome from Florida. Happy to have you here. I like being busy because the problem is that shock to your system on a Monday morning when you suddenly have to get busy again after doing nothing. I hate that feeling. So it's sort of better to just stay busy, keep working, and that way you never have to deal with that weird feeling. Plus, I think schedules and routines are super important. So I'm currently desperately trying to get into like a strict routine. For various reasons, but one of them is to counteract sin. Because sin, man, if you just sort of idly go through life, sin is a bitch. So I'm trying to enforce that, and work sort of helps with that. Resolve the law, truth. I trust Trump also. Yeah, right now I have seen no reason not to trust Trump. And I feel like even though there are things that I might not understand about what President Trump is doing, I feel like President Trump has done enough to earn some goodwill. Right? So I'm willing to give him a chance to show me what is he actually doing, right? So that I can understand it. But up until now, the one thing that I can say about President Trump is that he has always, always done what is best for America. Or at least I should say, try to do what is best for America. Like that he has always done. Has it always worked out? No. But, everything you do isn't always going to work out. And so I'm willing to go, let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. If this works out the way that he hopes it does, and I hope it does, this is going to be a major victory for President Trump. If it doesn't, it's going to be a big, big and long 2 years. The cost of living is crushing the American working people. No, it isn't. No, it's not. It doesn't say the cost of the cost of living is not even as bad as it was under Joe Biden yet. And suddenly there are these voices that just claim as if this is the worst that the economy has ever been. Like you guys do know that these things are fact checkable, right? Like you can Google this. Like just making a claim doesn't make it true if the other person can just go, what was the economy like under Biden? But yes, the economy has taken a bit of a dip, but it's nowhere close to as bad as it was under Biden. And it's not even that bad now. So stop with that nonsense. The bad spot on Biden's economy was 2 months. The hell are you talking about 2 months? Are you for real? Now I know I can't take you seriously. Again, you do know that these things are fact checkable, right? Like Biden's economy was not just bad for 2 months, dude. You see, this is something that I genuinely think. So this is something that Republicans will have to start guarding against, and far be it from a South African to tell you guys how to run your country, but take it from a South African that has dealt with the communism elements of this world. There's a couple of things that you have to understand. You are going to have a lot of fake conservatives telling you what you should be thinking and telling you how sick and tired they are. You're going to hear a lot of people going, I voted for Trump. They never voted for Trump, but they can claim it nevertheless, right? Um, it's gonna happen because this is how leftists work. You don't have to be honest because in communism, that which advances the revolution is ethical. They can lie, they can cheat, they can steal, they can kill, they can rape, they can support terrorist governments around the world. They can do literally anything they want as long as it advances the revolution. It is ethical. So I'm always skeptical of anyone that comes in and speaks on behalf of the working people of America. Who the hell are you? Are you the spokesperson for the working people of America? When did they elect you? Was it a good ceremony? Did you get a cloak or a hat? Maybe a pen that says spokesperson for the working people of America. In what way do you have the authority to speak on behalf of anyone but yourself? And now I know for a fact that you think I'm a moron, which I will just quickly tell you. I bet I know more about America than you. I bet I know more about your founding fathers. I bet I know more about your Constitution. I bet I know more about your history than you. $2,000 for a one-bedroom apartment? New York? Which city? Or are you saying that that's everywhere? Because I know for a fact that that isn't. Again, I can just Google this. It is not $2,000 for a one-bedroom apartment in the vast majority of America. So if you want to be a moron and go live in Los Angeles or go live in New York, by all means, but then you're going to pay $2,000 a month, or maybe even in Miami. You're going to pay $2,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment, but that's because you chose like a stupid idiot to go live in very expensive places. So what the hell are you even talking about? Like, please, dude, I am more American than you. What are you doing this weekend? I have a birthday, Kimmy, that's going on. And on Sunday, I think I have lunch with friends as well. So a bit busy. Check the second quarter of 2022 and you'll find those high prices that quickly dropped in the third quarter of 2022. Did you do realize that inflation all throughout the Biden years was astronomically high? I don't understand. Why do you think you can lie about this? Never mind. It's always better to just ignore fake moderates. Like, for example, and I'll end with this because I have to actually go, but I'll quickly end with this. I don't believe any of the stories that say that the Republicans are going to lose the midterms because Have you seen the support for the Democratic Party? The Democratic Party is falling apart, and yet everyone in the mainstream media, all of the supposed independent content creators, are telling me that the Democrats, which is currently the most hated party in America, a party that doesn't even know what a woman is, that's the party that's going to win the midterms? Them and who? When? But then, of course, all these voices tell me, oh, MAGA's over. Because Tucker Carlson thinks Donald Trump is a Satanist, MAGA is over. Do yourselves a favor. Next time you see a Tucker Carlson post on YouTube, go read the comments. Go read the amount of people that comment, welcome, dude. I'm so glad you finally see. Those are not Republicans. Those are not conservatives. Tucker Carlson's base isn't MAGA. Tucker Carlson isn't speaking to MAGA. Tucker Carlson isn't speaking to conservatives anymore. Tucker Carlson is speaking to Democrats. That's his base. Those are the people that's currently listening to him. Candace Owens, she's speaking to Democrats. She's not speaking to the conservative movement. They have abandoned Tucker Carlson. They have abandoned Candace Owens. You can look at the actual evidence of this. 93% of MAGA Republicans support the war in Iran. 93%. Favorability-wise, the Republican Party is 5% more favorable than the Democrats, which is actually insane considering the reality that normally in America, if you have a Republican president, by the midterms, the opposition party is leading. Americans love to do this. They'll vote for a Republican, and then as soon as the midterms come, they'll vote the Democrats in. Don't know why, but that's how Americans operate. But now you have the Republicans are actually leading. What the hell are you talking about? The Democrats are going to win the midterms. That's a joke. It is 100%. This is a psyop. The left desperately wants you to feel defeated, to feel as if there's no hope. MAGA hates Trump. There's no point in even supporting Trump. There's no point in even voting. The Democrats have this one because Trump has destroyed our chances. This is all a psyop, and you'll see it at the election booth. You'll see it the day as the polls come out, as we find out. It's gonna be hilarious to watch these Democrats squeal and scream and cry as they realize that they have lost America. And if the Republicans really want to ensure that the Democrats never win another election, they pass the Save America Act. Like that act right there kills the Democrats. Overnight, the Democrats will never win another election. Because if you didn't believe that the Democrats have stolen elections before, if you don't believe it now, right? If you believed it, if before you said, I don't know if they stole elections, I could have been like, okay, I can see where you come from. There's not a lot of hard evidence. There's some weird stuff, but it's not hard evidence. If you still don't believe that, you're a moron. Why would the Democrats scream at the top of their lungs like little children about the Save America Act? According to the Democrats, the Republicans are trying to steal the election by forcing or by legislating that only Americans are allowed to vote. That's their argument, FYI. This is unconstitutional because how dare you say only Americans get to vote? The hell are you talking about? Like, of course only Americans get to vote. What the hell are you talking about? The fact that they're so frantic about that tells you that they're lying. It tells you that they've stolen elections. Because if they had no reason to care, if they had nothing to hide, why would this matter? Right? If they would have won the election anyways, then this doesn't matter if they have to check for ID. They know that they have this in the back. Donald Trump is the biblical antichrist, Revelation 13, peace before total destruction. Okay, augmented night. If I may ask you, right, define Christian nationalism. Do you even know what it is? Because I'm willing to bet that you have no clue. No, battery, I do believe that the SAVE Act will pass, right? I do believe that. Um, Siege, yeah, that's pretty much it. The date, non-citizens, and withholding the deployed armed forces vote. Yeah, yeah, Anita, this is always the Hitler used Christian nationalism. He actually didn't. He used National Socialism. Um, Christianity actually played a very small part of what Hitler did. I'm gonna say, augmented. You probably don't know Christ, and you most likely don't know anything about Christianity. But you do think that you read a couple of verses somewhere, and so this makes you uh, an expert on something. Uh, it is not your book. Why are you quoting it? Iranian Christians say that this is not a war; it is a rescue mission. Almost all of the Iranians are saying this is a rescue mission. They're all praising Trump, except of course for the Marxists, the leftists, and the Satanists in America. By Satanist, of course, I mean Democrats. They're the only ones who do not support this war because, from their perspective, it is somehow evil for President Trump to want to remove a terrorist that kills his own people for protesting for peace. How dare you? I'm not sure how that's evil, but it is evil. The left swings it that way. Vampire Teddy, take care of yourself. But yeah, I am going to go now, and because I have some work to do. Um, Two Wheels. I never made any argument for Israel, but it is telling that your first argument is to go to Israel. I didn't say Israel once. I spoke about America and Iran. What's interesting is that you go Israel. I don't actually follow dispensationalism. I'm not a dispensationalist. I don't actually believe that Israel is the chosen people of God. I don't even think that I have to follow Israel or that I have to support Israel. I don't actually believe that. But when it comes to a war between Israel and Iran and America, I kind of have a zero tolerance policy towards terrorist nations. You know, when you have a terrorist nation that sort of for 47 years funds terrorists all around the world, is literally the reason for people running into restaurants in Europe with suicide vests, funds the Houthis and the Hezbollahs and the Hamases of the world. Kind of have a zero policy there, right? A zero tolerance policy on that. So I'm sort of like, hey, yeah, let's bomb the living crap out of them, kill them all. In my opinion, righteous war. war is permissible. Christians are allowed to go to war, provided that that war is just. And in my opinion, no war can be more just than removing a terrorist. So, yeah. If you want to talk about Israel, I'm happy to have that conversation about Israel, but after we've taken care of Iran. Then, sure, let's investigate Israel. Let's figure out what Israel did. I'm happy to do that. But I'm not going to start firing on my own allies while I'm at war. I'm not going to burn my boat as we're fighting the pirates. I'm first going to kill the pirates, and then I'm going to throw the mutineers overboard. You can't remove Israel and Iran at the same time. You have to pick one. You can't fight a war on two fronts. The hell are you talking about? Again, every other country in the world is spineless, or perhaps in cahoots with Iran. And now you want America to take the one country that is helping them take care of Iran and start shooting them too? Why? You do know you can do, like, first the one and then the other. I have no problem with whatever you want to do, but it seems to me that you will do whatever it takes. Like, if it meant the entire Middle East gets nuked, but Israel is the one that the bomb drops on, you'd be like, yep, let's do that. Because I don't actually think you give a crap about the Gazans or about the innocent little Iranians or whatever the case might be. I don't think you care about any of them. I think you care about Israel being destroyed. That's sort of your thing. You started reading history from about 1940, and you were like, yep, Israel shouldn't be there. And whatever happens, as long as Israel is the one destroyed, I'm happy with that. What happened to Gaza? No, you don't care. I am willing to bet you don't give a crap. I'm willing to bet that most of the things that you think happened in Gaza didn't happen. And you didn't even do enough research to know the things that didn't happen. I'm willing to bet that the only reason you give a crap about Gaza is because you hate Israel. That I'm willing to bet. Because I know your type. You don't know a single thing about Gaza. The only thing you know about Gaza is that you hate Israel. And so whatever the hell they told you about Gaza, you're happy to believe. Provided that it means Israel bad. Because if you knew anything about Gaza, you would know that the claim that this was a genocide is moronic. It is moronic. By their own numbers, they lost about 50,000 people. We don't know how many of those were terrorists, but about this 50,000 people. A very bad number, right? And any civilian loss of life is terrible. But for some reason, no one ever answers me, what exactly are you supposed to do when you have an enemy that literally builds its bases and tunnels under civilian infrastructure? What do you do? So this enemy attacks you on October the 7th, but you're not allowed to attack back because they use civilians as shields. So what do you do? Tell me, Mr. I care so much about Gaza. What's the response? Or are you going to now say, well, actually, Israel deserved the attack on October the 7th because they are occupiers? Is that going to be your next step? I'll make this clear for you. I'll make this clear. If Gaza didn't want to fight Israel, they shouldn't have started it. You can't punch first and then scream and yell because you're getting punched back. You threw the first punch, my dude. You don't now get to scream and yell about, oh, he's punching me again. That's your problem. You shouldn't have done this. But that's exactly where we are. Hamas starts the fight, hides behind the civilians, and then screams to the rest of the world, how unfair, they're attacking me. Again, Jews spitting on Christians, why are you making arguments to make me hate the Jews? We're talking about Israel versus Hamas. I don't care about the Jews. I don't give a shit about any of this. Like, you could tell me that the Jews are killing Christians. It has no effect on the war between Israel and Gaza. So what I know for a fact now is that you don't have any facts. What you have is emotions. You're hoping that because I'm a Christian, if you say they're spitting on Christians, then that will make me hate the Jews. And now I'll just automatically decide that Gaza is innocent in all of this. The hell are you talking about? That's not an argument, my friend. That is you being a moron. I don't have to feel anything about the Jews. And I couldn't care less about Israel. I care about, in that moment, who is the biggest problem. The Jews might spit on Christians, but you know what the Palestinians do to Christians? They kill them. On the balance of things, I'm probably going to go with the Jews there. I don't know about you, but I don't like being spat on. I like being killed less. So if that's the game you want to play, we're going to do a tit for tat, then okay, Gaza is worst. Muslims are the worst. So what's next? What's the other nonchalant, idiotic argument that you want to throw at me? Argue the facts of the case as it exists. We're not talking about who do you like more. We're not talking about is the Jews evil or not. We're talking about Israel versus Hamas. And in that conflict, Hamas started it. October the 7th did not happen out of nowhere. Hamas started that. So when October the 7th happens, October the 8th hits, and all of you leftists are already screaming about how evil Israel is, I'm sorry if I don't take you that seriously. Israel didn't even respond yet when you were already out on your university campuses screaming and yelling about how evil Israel is. Israel has just been attacked. And you leftists have already chosen Gaza's side. You're not a centrist. 2, you are not centrist. Centrist would be someone that can actually look at both sides of the argument. You are not a centrist. And in fact, there is no such thing as a centrist. People who claim to be centrists are simply people who don't want to be caught in an argument that they don't understand. And so they go, well, I'm a centrist. I don't actually have it. You have a side. No one is centrist, because centrist would mean that you are 50-50 on both sides. That doesn't exist. You're one or the other. You're either mostly Republican or mostly Democrat, but you're not 50-50. So across the board, you vote for both. Bullshit. You're not a centrist. You're a Democrat. Just own that, bro. Like, no one is gonna hate you here. I have friends who are Democrats. I have friends who are leftists. I don't mind leftists. But I can listen to your talking points, right? And I know for a fact that you are not a centrist. I also know for a fact that you're not a Republican. I know for a fact that you are a leftist. Like, your talking points are 100% out of the left. I may as well just turn on CNN and I'll hear everything that you're saying right now. Like, 100%. All of those talking points, just the same nonchalant arguments about stuff. Better than he knows himself? Of course I do. Of course I know him better than himself. Because he's out here lying. He's trying to be something that he is not, because he's trying to appear as something that he is not. Zingrover, I just described myself. When did I claim to be a centrist, sir? I am not a centrist. Not even close. I am 100% conservative. 100. There is not a position on this earth that I will ever take that is progressive or liberal. I am 100% conservative. You're quite arrogant? It's not arrogance. It's just the truth. The problem is, Lordoc, you're not listening to what I'm telling you. What did I answer you when you said you think you know him better than he knows himself? What did I answer you? I said to you, yes, because he's not out here being himself. He's out here lying. His actual heart? How could I ever know that? But I do know what he's doing here now. And because I've seen that before. Because I've seen that before. I see it from all of these leftists all the time. You come into the channel, you make a bunch of arguments, you just throw out a bunch of talking points. The second I start challenging the talking point, the second I start challenging your points, you immediately jump to the, oh, but the Jews do this to Christians. Always. Every time. It happened in this very stream about 5 times. Different people. Every single time I go, but how do you know that? Oh, but the Jews do this to Christians. Well, that's an interesting argument. That wasn't even what we were just talking about. Why? Because you just need to hate Jews. You don't really give a crap about the actual arguments or the actual people involved, as long as everyone hates the Jews. Because, hey, if that works for you, then that works for you. You assume I'm lying. You don't know the first thing about me. I believe my tax dollars shouldn't go to things that don't affect me. I support my war boys, my brother included. He's deployed. Yeah, do I know that? I have no idea if you're telling the truth. I don't even know if you're an actual taxpayer. In fact, I would suggest you're probably not. But let's say you are, right? Tell me, how does this war not affect you? See, the most insane, and I'm going to end on this because I actually do have to go. But the most insane argument that I hear from isolationist Tucker Carlson viewers and Dave Smith viewers, because you're one and the same, is this idea that America should just not get involved with the rest of the world because it has nothing to do with America. Well, newsflash, assholes. The rest of the world can only be ignored if you assume that everyone has the same mindset as you. So in other words, if you want to be isolationist and say we never should get involved in anyone else's business, that only works provided that everyone else also looks at you and says we'll never get involved in anyone else's business. The second you have even one country that goes, well, maybe we will get involved in other people's business, your mindset is childish. Because while you're busy not getting involved in other people's business, that other country is making sure that they can get involved in yours. There has never been a period in the history of mankind where the superpower of the day was able to claim, we'll just do our own thing and we'll let everyone else just do their thing. That is not how it works, because there are nations on this earth that wants what you have. And they don't want to work for it. They want to take what you have. They want to destroy you. That has always been true, and it will always be true. So the argument that, oh, I don't want to fight wars that has nothing to do with me. Eventually that war will have something to do with you. And the problem is, the longer you wait, the harder it gets to do something about it. So Tucker Carlson will go, oh, but they don't have a nuke. So when should you wait? Or when can you act? Should you wait until 2 weeks before they finish their nuclear program? Because I don't know if you guys know this, but it's actually quite hard to know how close to the finished product a country is. And the reason for it is there's something called rapid development. There's a point at which it goes really fast. From we don't have a nuke to, oh, we have a nuke now. And that period can literally be like a month. So the argument they don't have a nuke right now, I'm sorry, that doesn't fill me with a whole lot of peace and quiet and sort of, oh, great, we should just not go to war. Because the problem is that it literally takes one. That's it. Listen to the argument that you're making. You're saying you cannot attack them now because they don't have a nuke yet. All they need is one nuke, and then suddenly you can never attack them. Ever. One. Not 10, not 20, not 100. One nuke means that you can never attack them again. That's the end of anything. That means that this evil terrorist regime can now do whatever it wants, and you can do nothing to stop them. Ever. And your argument is, well, they don't have a nuke yet. We should not attack. The hell are you talking about? This is like watching a guy load a bazooka, and then I punch the guy and I break his bazooka, and you go, dude, he hadn't loaded it yet. I said, yeah, but he was gonna. He was gonna load the bazooka, and then he said he's gonna shoot me with it. So I shot him first. The argument as to whether or not he already loaded it is irrelevant. He was busy loading it, and I decided to take him out before he finished. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. I just explained to you why it doesn't matter whether they had one or didn't have one. I just told you it doesn't matter. We know that they were working on one. We know that they were enriching way past what they need for ordinary nuclear power plants. Way past. Why would they do that? Why would they enrich past what you need for a nuclear power plant if you weren't interested in building a bomb? Like, what the hell are you talking about? No, you didn't get rid of the uranium 8 months ago. Like, that's the whole point. You got rid of the facilities, the research facilities, the enrichment plants you got rid of. The uranium was moved. That's the whole point. That was the big failure. Everything was fine, and you did do some good work, but the uranium was moved. In the most recent campaigns, the uranium was bombed, but it's buried. It's not gone. They can still go get it, but they would have to dig it out. So the uranium is still there. And according to them, at least, the official sources say about 440 kilograms of the stuff. If it wasn't okay, so your problem is actually President Trump. That's your issue. Okay, but I just explained to you why this war makes sense. Your answer is, well, if it wasn't a bullshitter in the Oval Office, I might believe it. Okay, but what if I told you that there isn't a president for the last 47 years that didn't say that we should do what President Trump did? Every single president, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. Every single one of them said that we should do what President Trump did. He was the only guy that actually said, let's do this. So that actually fixes your problem, right? Because you just said if it wasn't a bullshitter in the Oval Office, it might be easier to believe. Well, take your pick. How many presidents do you want to go? There's 47 years worth of presidents to pick from. Pick your favorite one. He would have done what Trump did. So second argument that doesn't actually stand on anything. Instead, let's just get to a place of honesty. If you wouldn't mind. Let's just get to a place of honesty. There is not a thing that President Trump could do, ever, that you will appreciate or accept. And I know this because when President Trump announced the ceasefire, your side was suddenly up in arms because how dare you announce a ceasefire? You're giving them time to recuperate. So when he was at war, how dare you go to war? When he announced the ceasefire, how dare you announce the ceasefire? So there's no winning. There's nothing he could do to actually make you happy. Because your problem is him. You hate him. That by default means that everything he does must be wrong. That makes you not even worth talking to. Because I can't convince you of something that you don't even believe. You don't know if what America is doing in Iran is good or bad. You don't know if what America is doing, what Trump is doing is good or bad. You know, I hate Trump. He's bad always. He must always be bad. So if he does something, it must be bad. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I doubt you voted for him. Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to go now because I genuinely have to go help a friend of mine fix his PC, and then I have to go to the beach to get some vape juice. I will see all of you on Tuesday. Tuesday, 12 o'clock, we'll be back. We'll see what happens. I will have updates for you over the weekend if things change, so keep an eye out on the channel for any sort of updates and how things may or may not happen. I really appreciate all of you for coming out, even those of you that I have disagreements with, even those of you who I have arguments with. I still appreciate you being here and actually willing to have conversations. It's I think what we need. We need to be able to have conversations. And look, I respect the fact that I can be a little bit direct and I can be a little bit brass. And I respect the fact that I have the mic and you don't, so it makes it a bit harder to actually have any sort of real conversation. So I am cognizant of that fact, but still, you're a trooper for actually sticking it out. So really take care of yourselves, be good to each other, be kind to each other, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.